Hi, everybody. We're Wallet Guard. My name is Ohm. I'm one of the co-founders. My background's in cybersecurity. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Martin.
Hi everyone, my name is Martin. My background primarily comes from software engineering, and today we're here to talk to you about why education alone will not solve security.
We truly believe that education is just a piece of the puzzle. It's really going to require a lot more than that. Abstracting away a lot of the education required to onboard users today, it's really intense. When we bring someone into Web3, it's a lot of things that we have to talk about. So we truly believe that tooling is going to be one of the reasons we can take away a lot of the education required. So I want to start off with a story. So everybody knows the founder of Proof Labs, Kevin Rose. About a month ago, he was victim to a phishing attack. So the first thing that he did wrong was he was going to mint the Punk 6529 NFT, and he ended up making the first mistake, which was landing on a phishing website. Once he landed on this website, he connected his wallet, and quickly the attacker enumerated over all of the active approvals on OpenSea and was able to draft up a Seaport listing signature. So this led to all of his assets being drained in a single transaction. Now, what could have went differently here? Obviously, when Kevin Rose landed on this website, he had some false assumptions. When you land on a phishing website, obviously you didn't mean to go there. So you come with these false assumptions that every signature I'm going to sign on this must be legitimate. So the second mistake that he made was that he assumed that the signature was legitimate without actually understanding what the signature did. We truly believe that this isn't really readable for anybody who doesn't have a deep technical expertise in Web3. So this becomes extremely difficult for someone who is new to the space, especially someone who's looking to just buy their first NFT. It's an extremely difficult thing to understand. And especially if we want adoption, we can't have these requirements for people to be able to understand what's going on here. So what are some of the lessons we can learn from the Kevin Rose example? First off, double check the URL. Also, understand the transaction. The issue with these is it's easier said than done. A lot of times, people don't even understand that what is the official URL, especially when you come into a space like Web3. NFTs, they have all their different types of URLs, all their official domains. It's hard to keep track of every single different NFT collection and what their official websites are. The second thing is, we still can't expect everybody who comes into the space, even if they're a prominent figure, such as like Kevin Rose, who's been around the industry for a while, it doesn't necessarily mean he has the deep technical understanding of the inner workings of the blockchain. So he shouldn't have to understand how to decode a transaction, but he also shouldn't be signing something he doesn't understand.
So the point of this talk being about education, education is actually something we do quite a bit at Wallet Guard. We've hosted 30 spaces. We record them every Sunday on Twitter, talking to users, understanding where the pain points are and different types of trends that are going on in phishing. And this is often how we imagine ourselves talking about security, because it's just such a convoluted map of things you need to understand, such as like when set approval for all might be okay versus when it might not be okay. And so it adds a lot of complexity to end users. And how we imagine this at Wallet Guard is the solution being abstracting away a lot of the complications of interfacing natively with the blockchain. So one of the other things we think about this as is an ATM. We don't need to understand how to use an ATM or that the inner workings are software and hardware components. We just know that it works and that it's secure. And so black boxing some of these things and abstracting away the logic is what we can do in Web3 to help adoption and make sure that end users are using Web3 more securely.
So like Martin said with the ATM example, the reason why we believe this is such a great example is because when you walk up to an ATM, you have a simple usable interface. So what we did at Wallet Guard was try to create a simple interface that can tell you what's happening on a transaction. So on the right side, you can see we're identifying that this is a Seaport signature that you're interacting with, not on OpenSea, not on an official marketplace. So those are obvious red flags right off the bat. Another thing that we can already identify due to some of the phishing detection work that we also do is that this website was recently created, etc. And then another thing that was really interesting about this one specifically is that when you do a Seaport listing, you're not receiving anything in return here. So you can see that the assets are being stolen and there's literally nothing coming back in return. And this is a signature that's very similar to the signature that Kevin Rose saw on that day. The only difference here would have been Kevin Rose would have had a list of assets from every single collection that he had an active approval on. So we really believe that by abstracting away a lot of the complexity required and a lot of the understanding required, rather, we can essentially create tooling that makes an easy, clean interface that's friendly and really explains and does a good job of telling you what's going in your wallet and what's coming out of your wallet on a transaction. And we feel like this is a very important thing for people to be onboarded into the space, as it's currently extremely difficult, because now we also, on our Twitter spaces, quite often we have people ask us the question of like, where do I go to learn Solidity? How do I learn to read smart contract code so I don't get scammed? This shouldn't be the answer. Now, given if you do want to learn about this, that's great. However, it shouldn't have to be the answer to be able to transact safely and securely in Web3.
And so on the other side of tooling that we've been working on is our proactive phishing detection. And one of the reasons we've decided to work on this was because posing a question for the audience here, how many of you can name me the exact URL for Azuki without looking it up? It's probably not many. And so this is why when we consider that in Web 2, you can call up your bank and let them know that you can reverse the transaction. You can't do that, unfortunately, in Web 3, obviously. So we need to think through how new users are being onboarded, and it's typically through NFT communities. And so having official links, typically you would have to go to the official Discord, Twitter, CoinMarketCap. These are different sources of truth for where we get information and our links. The problem with this is obviously when this happens, when Azuki gets hacked on Twitter and they tweet out a fake link linking to azuki.ws instead of azuki.com. And so this is one of the major reasons why for end users, you shouldn't need to know exactly like what the URL you're interfacing with is. You should just know that it's safe, going back to the ATM example. And so with this scam alone, unfortunately, over 1.2 million in assets were drained, over 750,000 USDC in a single transaction was stolen. And so these are obviously major problems for adoption. And so it's really important for us to encourage tooling for end users.
So one of the root causes, even in Web 2 and spreading into Web 3, is social engineering. It's the most common tactic, and over 90% of attacks start with some vector of social engineering. Social engineering can be many things, right? It could be trying to create a friendship with an individual. It could be posting a link on a verified account, compromising a Discord, compromising an admin's account, and then posting a link. Now you're using that inherent trust that that individual might be having in order to compromise other individuals. So what we're really trying to do at WalletGuard is abstract away a lot of the complexity required and really take away a lot of the issues that people might have when transacting in Web3 specifically, by creating tooling that really gives you a clear insight into exactly what's happening on your transactions, as well as keeping you going to the right places when you are trying to transact in Web3.
Yeah, and just on that note as well, security and UX are obviously one of the main things that we think about as it relates to adoption. And so like having a lot of empathy when we design like UIs is really important to us. And I think that Snaps is actually doing a fantastic job with this. MetaMask Snaps, for anyone who's not aware, allows developers to build directly into MetaMask and extend the functionality. So just in case you don't believe us that transaction simulation will be the future, Snaps already has an API exposed to do transaction insights, right? So while they're not live right now, coming Q2, I believe is the launch right now, you'll be able to start experimenting with real snaps and improving adoption. And so we definitely want to commend Snaps and the progressions they've made towards security. And then EIP 4337, account abstraction. Shout out to Safe for already doing the work for us there on explaining why that's important. So I'll just cut that part out, I think, right now.
Yeah. In conclusion, we really don't believe education alone will solve security. We believe that it's going to be a combination of education and tooling to abstract away the complexity that's required to onboard the masses. We can't expect the next million or billion users to be onboarded into the space in the manners that we're doing it now. If we really want to onboard individuals, we're going to have to think a lot more like Reddit. They were able to onboard the masses without them even realizing it. So what we need to do is create an interface that's simple, human readable, and easy to transact with confidence. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do you wallet consider to work with the different kind of like DeFi project or NFT project owner like a Zuzi case? Is your product require you to maintain a contact with all those project owner?
Yeah, sure.
So something we do is we actively look at like different NFT collections. So we go to OpenSea, we look at the volume of a lot of different collections, grab the OpenSea slugs, and we're scraping dynamic list and pulling, make sure we have the up-to-date links as well from there. And then a lot of times we do actually have contacts at a lot of these different communities right now. So we practice like we have proactive phishing detection, but the way that it actually works is that we have a allow list for certain projects, which utilizes, that's where like enhanced protection is enabled with like fuzzy logic and impersonation attempts. Whereas the other websites, we use our proactive phishing detection, which is more so on different heuristics like metadata analysis, DNS records, etc. And then for communities like that we do have contacts with, like for example, we've talked with some builders in the Safe network and they've sent us along a ton of links. So there are different ways to source them. And I think that is one of the challenges like right now, finding all of the official links and making sure the dApps themselves are trusted. So that's kind of like a hand curated list right now that we're enabling enhanced protection for. But later going forward, we're hoping that more submissions come in and et cetera, like being able to pull those lists that way. Yeah.
Another question, since no one else want to ask. Do you have any monetization strategy in the future, or this tool is like 100% free for the user to use?
Yeah. So at the moment, we are completely free, but we do have a 2B plan as far as getting our APIs integrated into different wallets. And then secondary, we will be introducing a subscription model later down the road. Right now, just for customer acquisition and getting people familiar with the product, and just to make it least barrier to entry, we're keeping the product free.
Hi, I was just wondering, from building the transaction simulator, was there any part that was maybe unexpectedly hard or difficult as you built it out? Just some of the challenges, I was curious.
So John actually here is the one who built most of that. But the thing is, as we were wrapping up development on that, Alchemy literally released the tool, and it just made it that much easier for us, right as we finished too. So very convenient timing. So we ended up using Alchemy. So Alchemy made it a lot easier for us there.
So yeah, you were talking about education. How are you making users aware of you? How are you educating users about WalletGuard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of educational content marketing on Twitter. We're up to about like 28,000 followers, but we host weekly Twitter spaces. So we've had guests like Dan Finley from MetaMask. We've had people from Certic. So we've had all kinds of guests, and it tends to bring a lot of audiences. We've actually held like some pretty massive Twitter spaces as well in regards to education. So that is an initiative that we take upon ourselves. Like we truly do. So as much as I know this talk was about how education alone won't solve security, this is something we've learned through being educators and really coming to the conclusion that, we can sit here and talk to everybody who wants to actually listen, but at the end of the day, we know the tooling is actually going to be what's required to abstract away that complexity.
Yes, so how do you make sure, because like security tools like this or password databases or PGP encrypted email is typically like a niche. So how do you how do you adopt that mass user base for WalletGuard as opposed to people just being used to using something like that?
Right. So WalletGuard is a Chrome extension. The extension itself is open source. And as far as like user acquisition, I mean, it's pretty, I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood your question, but it's simple as adding to like the Chrome store, and you just look at the permission set, and then also you can look at the open source. Is that the question? I'm sorry.
No, I just mean sort of like security tools typically are just like advanced tools like this typically are like a niche, but I see obviously it's way better than obviously. I'd like to see what I'm buying in the transaction. So
Yeah. So that was the whole idea. We really just want to give people an idea of exactly what's happening on their transactions to provide more clarity and insights.
So I'm actually like a, I play a lot of NFT and I trade a lot of NFTs. So my question is like, you guys say that you are Chrome extension, but then like if you like look back in like 6 months ago, there's a lot of Chrome extension for like Sniper 2, where you can see like the ranking of their NFTs. But then like the hard part is about like how you make the trust for the users, because like for me personally, if I hold a lot of like ETH in this account, I don't want to download that extension to my browser. So like how are you guys preventing or like onboarding your user from that?
Yeah. So the way that WalletGuard actually works is, so the code is open source for this reason exactly, for transparency. And we're so this really hasn't been announced publicly, but we are like in a strategic partnership with MetaMask, and we're trying to build more trust in those regards. So right now we left the extension repository open source, mainly so that people can validate for themselves that this is what we're doing and we are doing exactly what we say. And this is really important because I think that is one of the biggest concerns that I don't think people bring up enough. Because at the end of the day, when you do install tooling, and this goes for like apps on your phone, this goes for apps you add to your extensions and whatever that is, you don't know these permission sets that everybody's taking. So it's good to have like open source tooling that you can go and audit and make sure that people are doing what they say they are.